afternoon. It's Monday afternoon, April 25th. You're listening to Weather with Enthusiasm. Weather enthusiasts love the month of April. A lot of them do, at least. This country, today is no exception. This country, we have all different types of seasons going on at the same time. That was especially true a couple days ago when you had a blizzard taking place in the Dakotas. Temperature hit 97 degrees in North Platte, Nebraska. We also saw a foot of snow in Spearfish, South Dakota. Those two cities, they've got to be less than 300 miles from each other, maybe even less than 200 miles from each other. But even in one city alone, you have temperatures going up and down. You know, in those places, you have 30-degree differences between night and day on a daily basis. And you get into the southern high plains like Amarillo, Texas, it's common to see 40-degree differences between night and day. And when you get also further south than that, Rio Grande Village, Texas, which we'll talk about in just a second. But, you know, in the high plains, we have another storm system that's going to be coming for the northern high plains once again for this weekend. The backside of it, once again, precipitation will be falling as snow, according to some computer models. But I have no idea how much snow will be occurring. We have another low pressure system coming for the beginning to mid part of next week. Williamsburg, Pennsylvania, this afternoon hit 77 degrees. As warm as that is, it doesn't compare to what happened yesterday. High temperature hit 85 degrees in Williamsburg, Pennsylvania. What's so phenomenal about that? It's not super phenomenal, and it doesn't really compare when you go back to the plains, but it's the way it's happening. It's the way, the whole setup in the Northeast right now, it's very interesting because usually you have cold air moving from west to east, and that's what's happening. Actually, you have a cold front. The cold front's moving from west to east, but right in front of the cold front, you have warm air, just a pocket of warm air. And in front of the warm air, we have an ocean breeze destruction air mass. We have what would have been warm air, but the winds came in off the ocean. So the warm air never really made it to places like New York City, Philadelphia, places like that. But you go a little bit further inland into Williamsburg. You know, Philadelphia, it wasn't forecasted to. I don't know for sure what happened over there. Williamsburg's not, you go further inland, you get temperatures upper 70s, mid 80s. Yesterday, 85 degrees for Williamsburg, and then today, 77 degrees. That's going to be the last day. Today will be the last day for that warmth. The cold air will finally arrive for tomorrow. You have Baltimore, Maryland, Washington, D.C. Those cities, the complex forecast was known to meteorologists before the day began. You know, today for Washington, D.C., forecast highs only in the 60s, maybe low 70s, much different than yesterday's high in the mid 80s. You go into Virginia, temperatures are in the upper 80s and low 90s once again. No ocean breeze for that area. Eventually, the cold front will move through that area as well. So we see the spring and summer season battling itself out on the East Coast. Not really. It's not really battling itself out. Not really. It really isn't. But it kind of looks like that, so we can call it that. But in the plains, it really is battling itself out. You have the hot air from the south clashing in with very cold Canadian air. You could even call it Arctic air from the north. And that's going to be happening again for this weekend. This weekend, we have another hot air mass developing the desert southwest. Temperatures going into the 90s as a high pressure ridge develops over there. Upper 90s for much of Arizona. That high pressure ridge then moves into southern Texas. In southern Texas, those temperatures go into the 90s for Friday. The coolest day this week will be Friday for the desert southwest. That's when things really start to heat up for South Texas. Rio Grande Village, Texas. There should be a special podcast done just for Rio Grande Village, Texas. Nothing could be better than Rio Grande Village, Texas. I don't know if anybody lives there or not. I have no idea what the population is. Many newspapers don't even count it. They don't seem to have any weather information about the city. It's perhaps the reason is because it's in a national park, Big Bend National Park. They say it's one of the most beautiful national parks in the country, and it's difficult to get in because they only allow a certain number of people in per year. It's also in the middle of nowhere. You have 40 to 50 degree temperature differences between night and day, especially when you head into Mexico right next to Rio Grande Village at Bacualas Crossing. you have 40-degree temperature differences between night and day, even more than that, as we're going to see later on this week. Temperatures go up to 107 and 108 degrees over there, and overnight lows are in the low 60s. In fact, sometimes the cooler it is at night, the hotter it is during the day. You could tell how hot it's going to be the next day. If the overnight low is going to be in the upper 60s, you'll probably have highs only in the upper 90s the next day. But if it's going to be in the lower 60s, you'll see those high temperatures heat up to about 106 to 107 degrees. It's an interesting phenomenon that goes on over there, kind of similar to what goes on in the Central African Republic in Africa. That's the hot air. There's cold air up north as well. A foot of snow fell in Spearfish, South Dakota. 20 inches of snow fell in some areas of the Dakotas. 15 inches in parts of Montana. A pretty heavy snow event, and that was on top of an ice storm. Plenty of power outages and really strong winds. The strong winds continue today for a much larger area of the country than just that. We also have the development of much needed precipitation over in South Texas, the Rio Grande River Valley. That includes South Padre Island, Brownsville, Texas. They have thunderstorms that will be developing later today. Perhaps they've already developed 2 waves of precipitation. The first one's thunderstorms. The second one might be mostly rain, 1 to 3 inches. That's excluding the thunderstorms. There could be some severe storms, but the Storm Prediction Center has also acknowledged that probably about a 5 to 10% chance within a 25-mile radius of seeing severe weather. But the main thing would be the heavy downpours, which could produce some flash flooding. As dry as it is, there still could be some flash flooding down in South Texas. Following the rain, we might have a couple days of cool weather, 10 to 15 degrees below normal at least, but then the heat, as we've mentioned, pours in for Friday. The Chicago area has a little bit of a slight chance of some frozen precipitation moving in late Wednesday night, but Wednesday in general, it's just going to be a winter day. It's going to feel like December on Wednesdays. Those winds come in off the lake. High temperatures remain in the 30s despite sunshine. We will be seeing a storm system, a weak one actually, that moves through the area. We would just call it a weak area of low pressure Thursday night that could bring some precipitation to the Midwest, including the Chicago area. Stronger storm system, as we've mentioned before, develops for the weekend. That pushes through goes right into southern Minnesota. Chicago's on the warm side of the storm. An additional low pressure system develops on the back side of the storm system for the beginning part of next week, which continues the precipitation for North Dakota. Just continuous precipitation. They're going to have a chance for snow with both systems. Rain changing to snow. The snow might not accumulate, but there probably will be places where the snow will accumulate, especially when you go into southern Canada. In fact, there are places where within a week from now, there might be a storm producing more than a foot of snow again for those locations, and North Dakota is not excluded from that yet. They're not out of the range for that, despite the fact it's going to be May already. So the seasons battle itself out. The difference between the East Coast and the Midwest and the Plains, the difference is that the seasons are not clash. There's no fight on the East Coast. That's the Matthias. It's just cool over there and warm over there. We don't really have a storm system developing along that contrasted temperatures for whatever reason. There's nothing really forming over there. But when you go into the high plains, there are storm systems that are developing, and the storm systems develop because of the clash in temperatures, but also the storm systems help develop these clash in temperatures. I think really the storm systems help the air masses develop. They help bring the heat in and suck the cold air down from Canada as the winds circulate counterclockwise around the low pressure system. On the East Coast, it's the air masses clashing, and perhaps you'll have a low pressure system that will develop along that area. But it's really in the plains, you have the storm system. The main thing really seems to be the storm system, and then the air masses come together. Granted, there already is a little bit of a difference in temperatures before the storm system develops, but it really brings it to maximum potential, especially this past Friday, 97 degrees in North Platte, Nebraska. You really saw some amazing stuff. And that's the type of things that we see in the high plains, especially the high plains, which are the area of the Great Plains, but with higher elevations. Right now in the country, the dew point situation continues to not look that impressive. Nothing too exciting in that area. Highest dew points really are in the low 70s in Key West, Florida. Most of the country, even in the most humid spots, are in the low 60s. Dew points are in the low 60s, even in the humid areas such as Virginia. You have temperatures approaching 90. Some areas probably even got into the low 90s in Virginia with a dew point of 60. It feels like summer, but it's nothing oppressive. Heat indices in that type of a situation are in the lower and mid 90s. That's based upon the heat and humidity alone. Texas also, you have dew points actually are higher in Texas, dew points in the upper 60s, temperatures low to mid 80s on the coast, Corpus Christi, Houston, Texas. You're going to have heat indices close to 90, but not that bad. The place which is most oppressive in the world, probably the world right now, is in East India. Heat and humidity alone, no sunshine, just the heat and humidity alone, already temperatures are going to be feeling at night above 100 degrees at night. That's the lowest part of the day. And this is for real. You know, this is real stuff. Heat index here in Chicago, we don't have a great enough appreciation for it because the heat index reputation has been destroyed here in Chicago by the wind. So they tell you on the radio there'll be a heat index of 105. It is hot, but people think, oh, come on, it's not really 105. Yeah, because there's a wind. But if you go to places like India where there's no wind, the winds are 3 or 4 miles per hour, the heat index is very real. In fact, it's even more real than the temperature, really. Many people will tell you that nothing could be more oppressive than a humid heat. 95 degrees with high humidity feels hotter than 115 degrees with no humidity if there's no wind. If there is a wind, then we have something very interesting that happens. The 95 degrees with high humidity no longer feels like 105 or 115 degrees, depending on the dew point. The wind brings that heat index down. It brings what the heat index feels like. The heat index is an official thing, so the heat index remains the heat index, but the heat index isn't accurate. It doesn't feel like 105 or 115. The wind brings it down and even could bring it down drastically. Drastically. It could really bring it down. Depending on what you're doing, there's a drastic difference between windy environment with heat and humidity and non-windy environment. The same is true. This is really something phenomenal. This is a big chiddush, a big shocker over here. The same is true in a dry heat. The wind makes it unbearable. The wind makes it unbearable in a dry heat. People in Arizona they drive on the highways. They open their window. They put their arm out the window. It's blazing hot. It's too hot. It's the wind, motorcycle rider. You know, you go into South Kansas, they have these motorcycle races. More people die from heat illnesses when it's windy than when it's humid. That's when the temperatures are higher than 95. Or they are 95, but it's dry outside. Similar to what happened in North Platte, Nebraska this past Friday. 31 mile per hour wind, temperature 95 degrees. Heat and humidity alone would put that temperature, the heat index was 91 degrees. But the heat index, you throw that out the window once there's a wind. In fact, the drier it is, the stronger impact that wind has on the heat. I think I spoke about this in the previous, in 2 podcasts ago, or maybe 3, of why that is, why it's so oppressive when you have windy, dry, and hot conditions. It's very simple. The evaporation pace is so intense that your body never gets wet in the first place, so there is no evaporative cooling. So you have the exact opposite. The heat and the wind actually win. They're the winners. So Death Valley, California, if there's no wind, temperatures feel 15 degrees cooler than the temperature. If there is a wind, temperatures feel 5 degrees warmer than the temperature. So the wind makes it feel 20 degrees hotter in places like Death Valley, 20 degrees hotter in a place like Death Valley. You go to Death Valley, California, normal high in July is 115 degrees. When you have dew points in the 30s, the heat index is only 100 degrees. So to them, 115 feels like what 90 feels in the Midwest. 90 degrees here in the Midwest a lot of times feels like 100, or 95 feels like 100. In India, 80 degrees at night. Right now, 80 degrees at night feels like 100 degrees because the dew point is 80 degrees and there's no wind at all. In fact, the heat index was made when there's a wind of 5.6 miles per hour. The winds are even less than that. So the heat index, if anything, is underrated. It's underestimated. The value really is more intense than what the heat index charts show for places in East India. That's probably the hottest spot in the world right now, where you have temperatures in the low 80s and dew points also in the low 80s. As we go through the day tomorrow, the temperatures start to skyrocket in the afternoon when the dew points start to drop. East India is one of the few places in the world where right now, on a daily basis, you wake up with sauna-like conditions, but by afternoon it turns into a desert heat. That's not common, and it's a daily routine over there. You wake up with a dew point in the upper 70s. Dew points drop into the upper 50s by the afternoon. New Delhi is extremely hot right now with temperatures around 105 to 108 degrees, and it's hazy. The visibility is very low because of pollution, and the air quality is unhealthy. You could put the word very, very, very by everything over there because that's what it is. It's just really unhealthy, and it's a dangerous situation that's taking place in New Delhi, India. The one thing they have going for them is that the humidity is not there yet. There is no humidity. The dew points are in the 40s. And there's no wind. So it's not as bad as it could be. But next week, temperatures go up to 115 degrees, and by the end of that week, the humidity returns at least on some level. There also could be a couple of thunderstorms, and I don't know what type of impact that has on the air pollution. I would think it has a good impact. I would think it kind of cleans things out, but it has to. It brings downdrafts from the upper atmosphere. I would think it clears things out. Maybe that's something to look forward to, but that's not in the forecast till the end of next week for New Delhi, India. And places on the coast, it's super humid. The water temperatures are beautiful. You have water temperatures in the low, I guess even the water temperatures are warm. They say the most pleasant water is 83 degrees, I think. Water temperatures are higher than that. Water temperatures are close to that, though. The highest water temperature I saw was 88 degrees off in the east coast of India. Gulf of Mexico, water temperatures are only in the low 70s, and that's why dew points are in the low 60s. Dew points tend to be about 10 degrees lower than what those water temperatures are. Some spots we have water temperatures in the upper 70s off the coast of Texas. You have dew points there in the upper 60s in cities like Houston, Galveston, Corpus Christi, Texas. As we go through the summer months, we're going to see those water temperatures rise to approximately 90 degrees, 89 degrees. And you'll get those dew points of 79 degrees. When you have that air moving over the Midwest Corn Belt, the dew points go into the lower 80s, sometimes even mid-80s. To summarize what we said here, we spoke about the heat in India, the humidity in India, the fact that there's a rotation of dry heat to humid heat on the East Coast on a daily basis, and there's a rotation of dry heat to humid heat on a weekly or monthly basis when you go into the New Delhi area. We spoke about the thunderstorms that will be developing in South Texas and then the rain that follows, and then temperatures below normal after that. But then things heat up on Friday. We spoke about how Rio Grande Village is 15 degrees warmer than its surrounding areas. And if we did not speak about that, we'll speak about that right now. Rio Grande Village is 15 degrees warmer than the surrounding areas in the afternoon. And many places, a lot of times Rio Grande Village is the hottest place in the United States. We're going to see that later this week as temperatures rise into the upper 100s and overnight lows dip into the 60s. We spoke about Bacalas crossing Mexico, which has 40 to 50 degree temperature differences between night and day. Big Bend National Park, one of the most beautiful national parks in the country. We spoke about the developing high-pressure ridge over in Arizona, pushing temperatures about 5 to 8 degrees above normal. And Friday will be the coolest day this week. Temperatures might not even hit 90 over there, which isn't so bad. It's probably pretty close to normal. Temperatures go back above normal after that. Spoke about the blizzard that hit the Dakotas, Montana, and even parts of northeast Wyoming this past weekend, along with the 97-degree heat in Nebraska. Also mentioned the ice storm and its power outages over in the Dakotas that happened before the blizzard. We spoke about the cool air off on the East Coast, which is clashing with warm air, yet there is no storm system over there. Williamsburg, Pennsylvania brings this point out the best, as you have temperatures there mid-80s yesterday. Temperatures closer to the coast, I think, were probably only in the 60s. You have the Washington, D.C. area that the forecasters had to deal with that complexity today. Virginia, they don't have to deal with any complexity. It's just warm, 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 probably the warmest in the country, with temperatures in the upper 80s to near 90 degrees for Virginia. And in central Florida, we also might see some 90s over there. Dew points we spoke about are only in the low 60s this time of the year because the ocean water temperatures are only in the low 70s. Places which are in the upper 70s have dew points in the upper 60s. I think we mentioned Chicago as well. Very cold winter weather, December weather coming on Wednesday. Chance of precipitation, minor chance Wednesday night. Could be frozen. Higher chance Thursday night, but still slight. Main chance comes in Shabbos as that storm system moves through the upper Midwest, keeping precipitation chances in the Dakotas for a prolonged period of time.